Yo, man, we got a ton of stuff to still hit on. Playoff picture. And I want to get back to talking to you about Hurts. And Yale brought a good point up here, too. And what we learned yesterday from Frank. Do you think he's playing better this year than he did a year ago? Do you think Jalen Hurts is having a better year than last year? By the way, I saw somebody say that Sil said that Hurts would never throw for 4,000 yards. With 460 attempts, he'll never do it. But they've upped his volume. Common sense. More volume of passes, better chance of throwing for $4,000. That's not that big a deal when you see some of the bums that are going to throw for $4,000. Okay? Lamar Jackson has won an MVP unanimously. He's never thrown shit, as far as I'm concerned. He's never thrown for over 3,500 yards. I don't think. He's never thrown for over 3,500. Like, he's probably going to throw for 31, 32 this year, maybe. Diego goes last year. Thank you, Matt. Better executed. Well, that's because the RPOs were in the offense. He's had tougher competition and has answered the bell. Interesting. I don't blame Jalen. I'm not blaming Jalen. I'm asking you just a simple question. Do you think he looks better as a quarterback this year than he did a year ago? This is not an indictment. Here, do you guys think he's outplayed? And I just randomly put these guys out here. There's no order. CJ Stroud. I didn't even put Mahomes here. Stroud, Sam Howell, Tua, Goff, Dak, and Purdy. Do you think he's outplayed any one of those guys this year? He's not outplayed Brock Purdy. He's not outplayed Brock Purdy. He's got the pelt on the wall. With this schedule, let's take a look at it. So CJ Stroud right now, here's Hurts' numbers. 403 attempts. He's going to have about I would say with the next 5 games, he's probably going to have about 530-something attempts. And that's going to be 100 more than he had a year ago, just about. Okay? 268 right now in attempts. 66.5, under $3,000, $29.95, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks, 93.8. Let's look at what Stroud's done. They're in the playoff hunt, aren't they? They're 8. They're in the 8 hole right now with far lesser talent. More attempts, 418. 3 less completions, 265. Less completion percentage by 3%, 63.4. Ton more yards, 35.40. How about this number? 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, 101.2 rating. You think Hurts has outplayed that kid? Don't forget Dan the rushing. Well, the rushing to me is more of a result of the brotherly shove and red zone. He's not really an RPO guy anymore. Why? Because the Eagles don't run RPOs. You know, when you say add the rushing touchdowns, I get it. I'm with you on that. Putting touchdowns on the board matters, scoring. But when you talk about outplaying someone, he's not outplayed CJ Stroud. That's a rookie. Let's move on. Sam Howell. Jesus criminy. Sam Howell's got 103 more attempts. 509. He's completed 335. It's quite impressive for a guy who was a stiff, I thought. He's a tick under Hurts in completion percentage at 65.8, with maybe the worst O-line in football. He's got 34-66. 18 touchdowns, 14 picks. Not very good there in those numbers. Both ends. 85.6 rating. Not awful. Tell you what, Eric Bieniemy, well done. Well done. And you thought Sam Howell was not good. I did. Congratulations, senor. You have a memory. I did. And you thought Dean was good. Tua. 2 less attempts, 401. More completions, 281. 70.1 completion. 34-57, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks, 106. He's outplayed Hurts. And get this, some go, Sills, he beat him. He did. But at the end of the day, that's not going to matter. I'm talking about individually here. Who's had better seasons? Look at Jared Goff. I'm going to get to a point here. There's a point that I'm going to make. 430, more attempts, more completions, 291. Higher percentage completion, 67.7. 32.88. More passing yards. More touchdowns, 20-8 picks, 98.1. Higher rating. Across the board, Jared Goff has had a better year. Dak enters this game against Jalen, 411. More attempts. 20 more completions, 288. Higher completion percentage, 71. 70.1. 32-34, more passing yards. 26 touchdowns, 6 picks. Across the board there, he's way better. 108.3. I'm going to get to the point. Purdy, this is insane. 332 attempts, 233 completions, 70.2, more passing yards than Hurts on almost 80 less attempts. Shows you how effective he is. 23 touchdowns, 6 picks, 116. Here's my point. If you're going to put Jalen Hurts in a pool of these passers, he's going to get lost. He's going to get lost in the crowd. What separated him from a year ago to this year is more what he did between the 20s than what he did from 20 to the end zone. And last year, it was what he did from the 20s and also from the end zone in. You've taken a complete major part of what made him a deadly threat a year ago, and you've put it now. Are you going to unleash this in the postseason? Are you? There's no point. You're just a hater. Well, then you should call your analytics department, Calvin, because there's the ones making the decision on this. I'm just pointing out what they're doing because of what a coach told me that coached there. See, that hater conversation doesn't work anymore because I found out how you do business. Big Seal's peeled the onion back. I know what you're doing. I know how they're going about their business. This ain't nothing to do with hating. This is to do with what they do and how they do business. LJ goes 10-2 with one of the hardest schedules of all time. Not all time, no. One of the hardest stretches. Yeah, that's a pretty good stretch there. Okay. Before the game, you said Hurts was clearly better than Purdy. Now you're saying, no. I never said no. See, here's Chris again, hearing half the bullshit because he's got shit in his ears. I said he's outplaying him this year. I didn't say he was better. Where did you hear me say that? Brock Purdy was better with only 17 starts in the NFL. Where did you hear me say that? I said the situation in San Francisco is better than Philly because he makes $900,000. Once again, you hear what you want to hear. And this is exactly what social media is. You'll hear half of something or 2% of something, call somebody a racist or he can't read defenses and say, well, that's a black comment. It's idiotic. How you go to the low-hanging fruit all the time. Harder schedule, harder stretch. Okay? By the way, here's the deal here. Nobody's talking about harder schedule. They're saying Dak's out. He's going to get lost in the numbers 2 years from now. Nobody's going to remember your schedule. They're just going to remember you beat the Giants. Okay. Hey, guys, Tone, did I say Brock Purdy was better than Jalen Hurts, or did I say he's having a better year? Did I actually say that ever? That Brock Purdy is better than Hurts and I would take him? His situation financially helped San Francisco and he's having a better year. You don't like it? Too bad, dog. That's something I can help you on. You said he's having a better year in a much better situation. Yeah. That's exactly what I said. Because he's got a coach that has say in the system. You got a coach that goes along with the system. How about that? Jalen Hurts is beating these quarterbacks. And Jalen Hurts is winning these games in spite of your nonsense. Doesn't that infuriate you more than me pointing it out? Sills, you're more of a Josh Allen guy. I am. That was on display. I am more of a Josh Allen guy. I will not bend off that. Shit, Josh Allen is having a spectacular year. He is. I won't even look it up. I know he is. With one receiver. Okay? With one receiver. Do you think the players are aware of this? Guys, do I think the players are aware that the analytical department gives the information to the players? This is so easy here. This is what goes on in your organization, told by me, or no, told to me by your world champion OC. I did it for you in front of you. So you know I didn't make it up. And I still have the text. I texted, and I've been talking to Frank for 2 days now. Here's how the players get the info. And this is easy to go. Watch this. So when Mike Silsky or anybody asks the question, hey, is this your game plan? Yeah. Theoretically. Not technically. Well, technically, yes, it is. Theoretically, it's not. Okay? Theoretically, it's not. Technically, it is. Nick, you put the game plan together. Yeah. Who did the work? Howie. Howie gave you the information to put the game plan together? Yeah, my analytical team. Run by Alec Halaby. and his crew. We've been here for 16 years. Longer than three coaching staffs. Right? Is that 3 coaching staffs? 16 years? Shit, that may even go back to Andy. Your analytical team has been in place longer than 3 coaching staffs. Don't. And so this is what will happen. Sunday, you play the game. Monday, you come in and watch the film from the Sunday game. You'll break off into a defense and offensive meeting. Then you'll break off into first you'll watch the game as a team. Then you'll break off defense, offense. Then you'll go position. And you'll go get some treatment. Maybe, some weights. Tuesday's player's day off. Wednesday, you come back, full day of work. You show up, team meeting. You have a group meeting, offense, defense. You get your playbook or your, as some of you say, stats. You get your trend book. What's the trend book built on? Analytics. Those analytics didn't come from the position coaches. Position coaches don't sit down any longer and break film down like that. Now, I'm not saying they don't watch film. They do, because then they're trying to match up the analytics to what the analytic guys are saying, because they want to get a sense of it. Just because you tell me something works on 3rd and 8, I want to see why it works on 3rd and 8. Now, look, I don't think having a mountain of information is a bad deal. Okay? I don't. Hey, LJ, it's not that I don't hate, it's LJ, it's not that I hate the analytics. I hate that it supersedes the human element of coaching. Do you feel me? It's more about the human element of coaching. And Seth Joyner said something yesterday that's so poignant in how you looked at tape back then to where you do it today. So the position coaches get this intel from Howie's group, and they build their resume or they build their game plan off that analytics, okay? And they watch film. I'm not saying they don't. But when you're a player and you're making your own analytics, you retain it more. You're watching something, you're writing it down, you're watching it, you're writing it down. Instead, now you're being told it. Do you retain all that information being told? How many times people tell you how to run a drill or tell you something and you don't retain it? But you retain something better when you write it down on a chalkboard, or you write it down in your notebook, and you see it on game film, you write it down again, you put cliff notes. You're going to retain more because you studied longer, you've looked at the play longer, and you're making your own analytics. So when you're in the middle of a game, what happens when you're in the middle of a game? You apply all that shit that you retained during the week because you remembered that Minnesota liked to do a tight end trap on 3rd and 1 when they're in the middle of the field. And you'll start to see splits, and you'll start to build your own analytics. When you're a player and you're getting those playbooks, those coaches aren't the guys crunching those numbers any longer. And the players don't crunch those numbers because the players are getting it from the analytics and the coach. You're going to watch game film, but you're not going to be as intense as, say, you were back 20 years when you're doing it all yourself. They've taken the element out of the players' hands, put it into the front office, and that's why you don't have old school coaches any longer telling the players like, buddy, go do your work. They got people doing the work for you. You don't retain it as much. That's common sense. You think you're doing the players a solid, but what happens when you get injuries and you have new faces and you got an entire group of linebackers that were cut this year that have to work with communication? How is that possible? And there is why you're all over the place defensively. This is why this year, what's that here? The Eagles are the worst team on third down sacks this year. Last year, you were on a historic run. You're the worst on third down conversions, giving up 50% of completions. Horrible. Poor corner play has resulted into some of the worst numbers, especially over the last 5 weeks. Okay? Yeah, you got a bunch of computers saying this is, dude, like I said to when Tone was on, you got people now that are doing this. We think these are the best 10. Hey, think about this, guys. Among quarterback, Hurt ranked second in total TDs and 6th in total TDs. They only rank in the top 6 both is Josh and 3rd in yards. Okay, it's funny that no one looks at him like that he's having a good year. Lucius, I think he is too. I think he's beating great players. And yet people have Dak ahead of him in the MVP race, along with Purdy. How's that working, Lucius? Lucius, how's that working? Propaganda? Look at Twiz is saying that I'm throwing propaganda out when Frank Reich told us all yesterday. He doesn't believe your offensive coordinator that delivered a Super Bowl on Broad Street for you. He's calling Frank Reich a liar. LJ goes, analytics is just a fancy word for scouting report. Funny. Back in the day, the people who put scouting reports together were D linemen or D line coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, linebacker coaches. They weren't a guy who worked at the Central Library in Philadelphia. They were guys who were coaches. Okay? You're calling me a liar. Can't be calling me a liar. Frank told me. Frank told Seth. You know what? Hey, you don't have to believe Frank Reich. You can believe Reuben Frank. Analytics go far beyond just a scouting report. This guy's a bozo. Right. Because you know why? Okay. Remember something here. So Doug Peterson got fired because he went against the analytics department. Your organization would rather have complete control than win a Super Bowl. I don't think that's just a Philly thing. Jerry Jones. Just, you know what? It totally now makes sense in today's NFL. Look at the coaches that have autonomy. San Francisco, Andy Reid, Belichick, Carroll, McVay. It makes total John Harbaugh. It makes total sense. Those guys are the last guys that make the call. And those are all your Super Bowl coaches that have won it. And the rest of these guys, they just follow along. Tomlin, get this. Tone, you weren't producing the show at the time. So Kevin Colbert, the president and general manager, former, now he's a consultant to the Steelers. Been there 20 years, 25 years. He came on the program. He goes, yeah, Mike don't work for me. I work with Mike. I give him everything he needs. Every single thing he needs. I give him all the information. And when the season starts, I get out of the way. He needs a player. We scour, we look, but we like to have player development from within. And that's why the Steelers have been a successful football program for the last 60 years. Okay? There's a reason why they've won the most Super Bowls. And there's a reason why there's only 3 coaches since 1969. It's the way they do business. They let their coaches coach. Don't you think there's a coincidence that the coaches since 1969 in Pittsburgh are all going to the Hall of Fame or in it? You don't think that's just by coincidence, do you? How many places have you ever seen 3 coaches go into the Hall of Fame in consecutive order? Can you name me one? Scouting reports focus on trends, analytics focus on probability. Correct. Coaches and GMs are literally making decisions based on so-called probabilities rather than instinct. That's why Jalen rolls his head. Okay? He rolls his eyes when he walks over and goes, damn, that's not what's happening. Just think about something. Think about something when you're looking at Pittsburgh. Noel, Hall of Famer. Cowher, Hall of Famer. Tomlin will be a Hall of Famer. There's a reason. Culture, how they do business, and they let their coaches do business as coaches. You think you're telling Mike Tomlin, you think some pencil pusher's coming down and telling Mike Tomlin to run a play on 3rd and 8? Do you actually think Mike Tomlin is going to sit there and have some guy who belongs in a CPA or a librarian come down and tell him what plays to run or intel to run in a game? Do you actually believe that? I've seen Mike Tomlin blow people up on the sidelines, and I'm not thinking that's working that way. Right? Jalen, here, let's put it out here this way. Your quarterback is the only reason you're 10-2. It ain't because of that shitty defense and the meddling that goes on. Dude, Jalen Hurts is more valuable to the Philadelphia Eagles than any quarterback in the league because of all the bullshit that's going on and all the people, and one person most notably who wants all the credit. Howie Roseman is the general manager version of Jerry Jones. Cheerleaders don't win Super Bowls, Twiz. What should I run? Hey, by the way, here's something for you too. So when Jonathan Gannon needed something, this is a perfect example for you when it comes to the coordinators in Philadelphia. Get this. Tone, think about this. When Dan Quinn took over for the Cowboys as D coordinator, Dan took over from Mike Nolan, had one of the worst rushing defenses in pro. I think the Browns put up 350 yards rushing on them. Dan Quinn rolls in there with almost pretty much the same personnel, changes the system around. And remember when DeMarcus Lawrence got hurt? That's when they found out that Parsons could rush the passer because he moved players around and he had to come up with a scheme and he had to move players around instead of going and moaning to your personnel department or your analytics department like Jonathan Gannon did to get Sue and Linville Joseph because he wasn't creative enough to come up with a scheme or he wasn't able to. That's when Howie came in and got 2 players. They didn't want the system changed. They just went out and got 2 players. Where Dan Quinn is more of a coach and he's more of a creator like Jim Johnson was. Created a spot for Hugh Douglas. There lies the difference in coaching and how front offices. Who in the world wanted Julio Jones on your team? He's a nothing burger. What is that? What is Rashad Penny on your team for? Analytic guys are putting him there? Dude, back in my day, if you had a coach like Jimmy Johnson or Parcells and those guys weren't playing, they'd cut him. What are they doing on your team? What is Rashad Penny, Julio Jones doing on your football team? I mean, Who in their mind thinks that those two guys have a right to have one of the 53-man chairs in the building? Who thinks that? Would any coach in his right mind, hey, ask yourself this. Ask yourself this question about Penny. So would you have a guy in your business that you paid pretty good money to, and you don't ask him to come to work? You're paying a guy to keep him away from Dallas or San Fran. Why would you pay a guy and give him a chair? Dude, I think the chair in the building, I'd rather have another linebacker. I'd rather have Christian Ellis active or on the 53-man than Rashad Penny. Wouldn't you? At least he's depth, special teams. Look at this stupid shit. You guys have been saying this for 15 weeks. Rashad Penny's insurance. No, he's not. They know that the Cowboys and the Niners and other teams wanted to make a play for Penny, so they got him on the roster and they're hiding him. So what, he gets hurt? You're not playing him. If Penny got hurt, put him on IR. He's no good for anybody. Can't sign a guy off IR. Play him. Insurance. Dumbest take of all time. Nobody saves anybody. Well, you surely needed him in that Niner game. You didn't want to roll him up for the Niner game? You're saving him for what? The Giant game? Julio Jones has caught 2 passes. What's he on the team for? What analytics guy, what coach in his right mind would want that dude on your football team? I used to think it was your coaches that were going to cost you Super Bowl. It's going to be Howie. Man, that guy winning that Super Bowl. He really believes it. Jalen Hurts is where you are, and you're where you are because of that quarterback. And I'll say it again, he is so valuable to that franchise. He's worth every penny because of all the mouths and all the voices that are in decision-making and how it all goes back to one guy. It really is quite remarkable. He is really important. That's why when they got rid of Wentz, okay, they got rid of Wentz because he couldn't help win games anymore. Nor did he want to play in the sandbox, nor was he tough, nor could he handle tough situations. They wanted a dog in there. Jalen Hurts is a dog, dude. Focused. And by the way, smart as hell. Brilliant. Plays within a system. Plays within that system. Get this. They put a lesser system in this year for him. They installed a lesser system for Jalen Hurts. Hey, fire Howie, and I guarantee that 31 teams would hire. You bet they would. Because if you've been listening, LJ, every single owner wants a Howie Roseman. Control. Bet your ass. You kidding me? Howie Roseman is the quintessential general manager of the modern day NFL. Never get me to say anything more than he is, without a doubt, the best general manager in pro football because he gives the organizations and the owner complete control. Absolutely. Absolutely. He'd be hired as the phone was hanging up. Devin goes like this, what can you do about it? Here, this is what and how and what you have to understand. The owner is responsible for this. like Angelo said a week ago. By the way, we got Angelo on Monday, 5:30. Here's what you do. The next hire, or Nick gets a set of onions. If Nick wins the Super Bowl, Nick's going to be the next Doug. Because he's going to go like this. I got a 700 win percentage. I've won the Super Bowl. And I'm not just going to sit here to get along, go along. Some of that analytics bullshit we had problems with. And then you have the unraveling. Watch this. The more success Nick has, the less time he'll be here. I said it yesterday. Take Hurts off the team, the whole ship sinks. It will, because too many people making decisions. And get this, even though you're going to have great talent, you'll end up 4-11-1. Yes, Warrior. Nick Sirianni wins a Super Bowl. It'll be the beginning of the end for him, like it was for Doug. Wouldn't you want a bigger – hey, let me ask you this. Wouldn't you want a bigger say if you won a Super Bowl? And then Nick will go somewhere else, understand what was being done. Hey, get this. There's no question Doug's a better coach right now in Jacksonville than he was in Philly, because he learned it's got to be in the coach's hands, not in the analytics hands. You think Trent Baalke works for Doug. Jim Harbaugh was fired in San Francisco with a 49-17-1 record and an NFC title because Baalke had power in San Fran. Once he left and the Tomasulos and the other losers, Chip and all them guys went in there, that thing fell on its ear. They had to fire him. They brought in Lynch. Then they got Kyle Shanahan from Atlanta. You think the analytics are used more this year than last year? And if so, why? Because you have lesser coaches when it comes to autonomy and say in the building. That's why. Don't you understand? That's the reason Chicago's on its ear. The difference between Chicago and Philadelphia, in my opinion, is that Philly gets the quarterback right. And they get the coaches right for the right way of how they're doing business. Chicago, when's the last time they drafted a quarterback that was worth the shit? When's the last time they hired a coach that was worth the shit? Lovey? Okay. But they didn't like Lovey. Why? Look at what Lovey did in Houston his last game. Like, you think Lovey's going to sit around and listen to some analytics hammerhead? Give him analytics on something when he's been around some of the greatest coaches on the planet? Never happened. Lynch is a former player. That helps. No, if you're going to push a narrative, it was last year too. Yeah, you know what you had last year? You actually had a coach who designed the systems. Don't you get it? It was an entirely new system, and it was Shane. How dumb can you get? Shane Steichen, this is his system. If you watched, am I right, Tone? If you watched Indianapolis this year, they're doing the same shit in Indianapolis that they're doing in Philly. With some twist because Gardner Minshew does some things different. But when they had Anthony Richardson, it was like the 21 Eagles. And they were going to bring him along, the 21 team, then the 22 that had more installments. That's how he was going to do it. By the way, Chris Ballard fights for his coaches. Hard to believe he still got a job there. Okay? And here, you had a coach who installed that system. And Gannon believed in plug and play. Why is plug and play important? So you can go out and get Shaq Leonard. Do you think Shaq Leonard fits in a 34? No. Have you ever seen coordinators hired to a new team that didn't bring their own system? You're seeing that more in today's NFL. You're right, but you can argue. What we are watching is the 2021 2-5 Eagle playbook. The only difference is they have, I would say, Tone, way more talent than they had in the 2021. And that's why you're winning games the way you are in a very down NFC. There's two teams, Cowboys and Lions. The rest of them are garbage. Dude, really? Are you fearing the Rams, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Bucks? Those are teams that are still in the playoff hunt. Are you fearing any of those teams? It's a shitty game plan. That's right, Tone. It's just a shitty game plan. You know what? I would say this. Hey, LJ, 2-5 playbook? Yeah, your head coach was fired as offensive coordinator. How come you don't bring that up, LJ? Your head coach was fired because the analytics guys in Howie took it away from him. What coach in 7 games is hired and decides to give up play calling when he was hired off of that distinction? It's a remedy for your ending, like Frank. He also took us to the Super Bowl. Wasn't his play calling. Well, because coordinators don't stay for 10 years anymore, so they try to hire coordinators that run their system to help with that continuity. Yeah, they have a continuity department, analytics, right. So when you're a coordinator and you come in, Brian Johnson has to conform with what you have here, same as Desai. Coordinators, it's becoming more apparent in the NFL, in my opinion, okay? It's becoming more apparent that you can't install your own systems. Like Buddy Ryan today. Hey, ask yourself this. Do you think the Eagles would hire Buddy Ryan as a defensive coordinator today? Do you think that the front office, Jeffrey Lurie, would hire Buddy as a defensive coordinator? Okay. Do you think that the Eagles would rehire Jim Schwartz, who has the number 1 defense in the league right now? Today. You think the Eagles would hire Bud Carson, creator of Steel Curtain? Do you think the Eagles would hire Jim Johnson? You wouldn't hire your greatest coordinator in Eagle history. LJ goes, Schwartz retired. No, he didn't. He quit. He wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. Now he's the D coordinator of the Browns. Yeah, that's a nice way of parting ways. I'm retiring. Yeah. 9 months later, he's the DC of the Browns. Gee, he retired. I had to get that AARP card, I guess. Was really something he wanted, was the AARP card. You know, you get that little mail and you get that email. I want to do something here. Tone was going down a road, and I stopped him because he was going into an area where I was going to hit on. I'm going to go back over tomorrow with him. But I want to get you guys out of here. Thoughts on it first. 2024 Philadelphia Eagle replacements that Howie's going to have to go through. That Nick will have no say in. Do you think that Quez Watkins gets replaced as the number 3? One. Are you okay with Cam Jurgens staying at right guard if Jason Kelce comes back? And then what do you do if you have Kelce retire and he goes over to his natural position of center? Then you've got to replace. Or are you okay with Steen? So you'll probably give Steen a go of it, right? So left guard's going to be something to look at. Maybe some depth there. Is Howie going to replace the backup quarterback? In Mariota? Devin goes, Steen will get better. How do you get better when you're not getting game reps? How do you get better? You're going to go down the Nakobe Dean line? Couple plays here and there, couple starts, and then you're going to put him in as a starter? How'd that work out? Laurie is convinced Howie won that Super Bowl, not realizing it was a team effort. Since Laurie's in the playoffs of Howie's hand, in Howie he trusts, not realizing the harmful side of Howie's ways. Pretty dime, here's the thing. It's about control more than trust. The owner wants control of the roster, the coaching, and the coaching staff. That is plain and simple. When you have people building game plans and you're drafting off analytics. Again, not all of that is bad. But when it supersedes your coaching staff, that's why you have guys you've never heard of as your coaches. Are you going to replace, get this, I thought you'd replace the offensive coordinator? No way. He'll probably get a raise. They'll probably pimp him for being a coach around the league because he's perfect. You know why, Sean? You know why Brian Johnson's perfect and he's a perfect candidate? Listens to the analytics guys. He is a better candidate to be a head coach than Jim Caldwell. Why do you think Brian Flores got fired in Miami? Makes sense now. Think about why he got fired in Miami. He didn't believe Tua. Now, you could make the argument he was wrong because the Dolphins are the number 1 seed now in the AFC. But the coach was superseded by the general manager down there, Flores. He was superseded. He lost his job because he went against the front office. He's a perfect candidate. So not as much. You're going to have to replace your running back. You'll never re-sign Swift. Dude, the importance that Swift has been to the offense this year, probably the 3rd most important. In some games, he's the 2nd most important. I would say this. That guy's going to make $7-8 million next year in the open market. He ain't signing him. I've seen 6 reports that have BJ as a front runner for head coaching. Blows my damn mind. I hate this new school way of playing ball. Hey, man, it's totally why you don't see older coaches in there any longer. You don't see Mike Martz. You don't see guys like that as head coaches. Mike Shanahan and those guys, they never get hired. You never hire no dog like that, fighting front offices, throwing punches on the sideline with coordinators. You're not going to see Buddy Ryans anymore. Defense, going to probably have to replace Brandon Graham. Zach Cunningham. Well, depending on what Shaq Leonard does. Didn't cost you nothing. It's prorated. You're only paying them like I like the bonuses that I heard Rob talking about today. You can make some decent money. You see those roster bonuses? I saw like $16,000 per game plus a paycheck of 400 grand. He's probably going to walk out of every game with all of his bonuses. You see what they did? They did him solid, though. They did Shaq Leonard solid. Tone and those guys were reading. A lot of it had nothing to do with like playing. It had everything to do with availability, roster bonus. Then it had to do with playing percentages. It had to do with game checks. So they were making it easy for him to land on that pod to make money. Like he'd probably make in the next 5 weeks, he could probably make himself $1.5 million, even though the base salary is going to be 4.6, 416, and that goes against the cap. All the incentives that he could make could help him make probably 1.5. That's not a bad work in a month. Okay? Pretty sad. Brian Johnson has a better chance of becoming a head coach than Eric Bieniemy. I don't know, man. I think Bieniemy's in a – get this. Even though he went to Washington, I think what he's done with Sam Howell, I think he's made – and the way Mahomes has looked this year, I personally think that Eric Bieniemy increased his value as a head coach this year and a head coaching candidate. I'm more apt to hire him now than I was last year. Aren't you? Aren't you more apt to hire him now than you were a year ago? I think he's been fabulous in Washington. Sam Howell is on pace to throw for some big yards. They found a quarterback. He's made this guy look like a viable dude. And Eric's absence in Kansas City has been a thing. Okay? Eric Bieniemy made an impact. Okay? Are you going to replace Kevin Byard? Are you going to replace – hey, let's do this one. If you're Howie Roseman and you get bounced in the NFC title game, are you replacing Slay and Bradbury? I would say this. Your first round pick is a corner. Okay? You got money tied up in Bradbury. You really don't in Slay. So do you go in the draft, play one more year with Bradbury, and get a rookie? I told you guys to get that McCullough guy from Washington. You guys all fought me on it. You hated him. You said he was too small and a schwimp. He's a pretty good player. That kid from Washington was good. I even told you about the kid Floyd down in Jacksonville. I liked him too. You're not going to draft a linebacker in the first round. That team is not going to draft that. They're not going to draft him. Trent McDuffie, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, I had him number 1 on my list 2 years ago instead of Jordan Davis. To me, in my opinion, Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox and McDuffie at corner. You think you're improved? Trotter in the second. Wouldn't have a problem with that. Are you replacing Seals? Would you still trade for Surtain? I don't know Denver's going to do that now because of the play of Russell Wilson. You should have did it. They had him on the market for a week, and they wanted 2 1s, and the Eagles didn't want to do it. Okay? The 49ers didn't want to do it. So, they were asking for a lot. Patrick Surtain is a really good ball player. Okay? He is a great player. You're not getting him for 2s and 3s or even a 1. You got to have multiple ones to get a guy like that. Get this. What position do you think in the NFL today is more valuable? A shutdown corner or a top flight wideout? What would you pay more money to? A top flight corner or a top flight wideout? I guess it depends who you have as quarterback too. Okay? I think that matters too. Who'd you right? That's right. Tone's like corner all day. Damn right, corner all day. It's a shutdown position. You got to have it. You got to have them corners playing great ball. Now, you could piece together a wide receiving core. Yeah, you could piece together a wide receiving core when you're paying a guy $50 million. That's what Kansas City, that's what New England did. They piecemealed wide receivers for 20 years. You know, I can't remember anybody they drafted that was worth a shit in New England during the Brady time. I can't remember anybody they drafted. No, you can't piecemeal corners. You can if you run that bullshit system they do in Philly, though. Wide receiver, but corners are great. I see. I can win without. If I have a good quarterback, I can win without an A1. Look at CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's a good. I still do not believe. I'm sorry. That guy's better than Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin in Dallas. Do you think he has better numbers? You think he has better numbers if he has Dak instead of, well, How's been better this year, so I don't know. A better team around him, maybe? By stats, the kid in Chicago is better than Surtain. I like that kid. That kid Johnson, was it? I wanted them to make a move for him. I did. All right, let me take a time out here. I want to hit on one last thing. Playoffs here a little bit. And a little bit of a I want to hit something else too on Hurts and the coverage of Jalen Hurts. Hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.